We are back with you once again on another Johnnie Torch review. Today, we're going to take on Cobra Kai Season 3, the long-awaited Season 3 of Cobra Kai. We've waited over a year for this baby, and did it live up to expectations? That's the question. This is going to be a spoiler review, so warnings up front, but I will try to, as usual, give some spoiler-free thoughts. I'm going to say that I liked Season 3 of Cobra Kai better than Season 1, but probably not quite as much as Season 2. I think Season 2 is a little bit tighter. I think the stakes were possibly a little higher for longer. I think there's a good buildup in Season 3. And of course, it's not a spoiler to say that there are many familiar faces that show up, making it very rewarding for Karate Kid Legacy fans. So it's a high recommendation for me. And, you know, the sky's the limit for this series. This is a series that knows how to do a second generation show or, you know, even film for a franchise right. They have done right by this franchise every step of the way. There really hasn't been any missteps, or at least notable missteps. I'll talk about some of the things I didn't like a little bit later. But yeah, for the most part, they always pay off on every setup, every character. Everyone gets their due. You don't feel like they mischaracterized anyone, particularly from the original films. But, you know, even their newer characters are always interesting and sort of react to the way you expect. So again, it's a high recommendation, and very, very happy with it. It was worth the wait, and I can't wait for more. I don't think they started filming yet. They seem to have taken like a year off. You know, at least as far as I know, they haven't gotten a jump on filming yet. So I hope they get cracking. Let's get to Season 4 ASAP. Now, let us talk spoilers. We're going to go through the whole show for about as long as I can. And let's see. I don't have any notes yet again. The computer ate my notes. I can't help it. It's not a lie. But I did prepare some notes, and again, the whole computer froze, went down, and I don't have them anymore. So I'm going to go by memory, and we'll just pick up some of the salient points here going through Cobra Kai Season 3. Okay, spoiler warning, and here we go. So to just give a brief recap, the series, Season 3 picks up where Season 2 left off. Miguel was in the hospital in a coma after the big school brawl where Robbie, Johnny's son, knocked him off the stairwell, and he landed on the banister and unfortunately wound up in the hospital. Robbie was on the run, and of course the cryptic friending of Allie Mills. That's what we were promised coming into Season 3. So coming into Season 3, we also got the trailer for a couple of promises we were going to get for Karate Kid 2 characters. And I was very pleased with this because Karate Kid 2 is actually my favorite Karate Kid film. And of course, that was the one set in Okinawa, where we meet some of Mr. Miyagi's old friends and nemesis. And that was something I was very much looking forward to as well. One of my fears, let's talk about that for a second. One of my fears is that they're burning through legacy characters so fast. They could have easily spent more time on any number of them in this season, because we get Kumiko, of course, Daniel's love from Karate Kid 2, probably my personal favorite, by the way, of his love interests. Chosen, of course, which again, he is the real deal. He is the bad boy. I mean, Johnny's a bad boy, but Crease will straight up kill you. He'll honor kill you without a second thought. And I was really concerned going into this, really concerned how they were going to portray him. I was worried they were going to make him a Apollo, a mentor, someone who was, just there to give him a power up. And of course, we also get Allie Mills. There's a whole lot of legacy characters in this season after they used them sparingly previously. We also get Bobby comes back, one of the original Cobra Kai. They had the big get together of the original generation Cobra Kai last season, which was fun, and it was nice to see that they brought Bobby back. And I don't know. It's nice to see them all get back together again. I don't know how realistic it is. They did find a way to work Bobby into the story, pretty organically, which was cool. So, all right. So let's talk about my concerns. My concerns. I was worried about Chosen. I really like what they did with Chosen. I was really pleased with what they did with Chosen, because the thing about having him be a mentor or something, as usual, I'm going to put this in contrast, and you're going to hear me probably say this on more than one occasion. I'm going to put this in contrast with The Last Jedi and how things are meant to, what's the word? The subversion of expectations. Subversion of expectations. Now, in this case, I really wouldn't have expected Chosen to turn out to be an all right guy. The way we seen him at the end of Karate Kid Part 2, he was basically ostracized by Sato. He really didn't have anyone, and it turned him into a very angry and vengeful guy who was pretty much already angry and vengeful in the first place. But it works that he turns his life around after that. He turned his life around. He took the instruction of Sato, who, of course, Sato apparently brought him back into the fold and tried to rehabilitate him. And that's what I mean by what happened with Luke Skywalker. It was against his character. Now, you would argue that that is the same thing that's done with Chosen, but you can believe that there was a positive influence on Chosen that was able to bring about this complete change in character. Because, again, it's, no such thing as bad student, only bad teacher. Sato was a bad teacher. And once Sato came around, lost his grudge against Miyagi that he had in the majority of Part 2, he became a proper teacher to Chosen. And, again, he restored Chosen to the Miyagi-Do way. So again, I found that all very believable, and like I said, this is coming from someone who was kind of concerned how they were going to handle that. Of course, the actor, which again I don't have my notes now, but he's great. He came back. He had the same kind of imposing presence. I mean, because he was the real deal. He was a scary dude. I always compare him to like Clubber Lang of the Rocky franchise. He was the guy to be most afraid of. I mean, he was going to put you in the ground, A great actor, and they have a lot of fun with him. And the sort of uncomfortable scene with the two of them getting back together for the first time, he and Daniel, was a lot of fun. Kimiko brings them together. And, they played through the, I was hoping they were going to do this. They go through to the dojo, the original Miyagi dojo, and, he knows Miyagi-Do karate because, of course, Sato was trained by Miyagi's father, so he knows all the secrets of Miyagi-Do as well from Sato, who learned them from Miyagi's father. So he did have legitimately something to teach Daniel. It wasn't something like this was just some kind of, what could Chosen possibly know that Daniel doesn't know? It made sense that there was some more offensive forms of Miyagi-Do karate that obviously Miyagi, being a pacifist, didn't want to really delve into nor impart to Daniel, who he was trying to train all this time to be merciful and so forth. And of course, the show does fan service like no one else. Now, there were several times during the show, during this season, that I knew exactly where it was going. I was so excited to see it go there, and I was so happy when it did go there. That's kind of, again, what separates it from things like The Last Jedi and the sequel trilogy, is that they know when to subvert expectation and they know when to play to fan service. With the subverting expectation, like I said, there were things like you really didn't expect Chosen maybe to be such a good guy. You really didn't expect, I mean, the way they built up Allie, you didn't really know if she was going to come in as a doctor to help Miguel, and so on and so forth. But when they were sparring, I knew full well that they were going to do the whole honk on the nose. Chosen was going to do that to Daniel, and I loved it. I loved it. I knew it was coming, and I loved it. And there are several other times this season where that kind of stuff happened as well. Again, I'm jumping all over the place, but to give another example, for instance, when Sam, who I thought had a very good character arc, or, you know, sort of a journey in this season. I thought she was one of the stronger players in this season. She is crippled with fear and anxiety and panic attacks over what happened in the school and the big brawl. And I knew exactly what Daniel was going to do, because any fan of the Karate Kid knows that Daniel's only real battle with fear was against bad boy Mike Barnes in Karate Kid 3. Which, again, that might be sort of the weaker of the trilogy, but it really had enough, you know, juicy parts that you could draw stuff from. And so when he's trying to bring her out of this funk, Daniel, he brings her back to the All Valley Stadium or what have you in the gym, and imparts to her the story of how he beat Bad Boy Barnes. And of course, that's not something that the Karate Kid fandom as a whole naturally gravitates to, that film, because it was a weaker film. But they're not afraid to take stuff from all eras of the Karate Kid, all areas, and to use what works for their own purposes. Again, this is just a very smartly written show, written from the perspective of fans of the material, and they don't disappoint. Now, one of the things that again, this is sort of, we're still talking about the subversion of expectation to sort of the fan service thing. Now, a lot that happens in the subplot, or, you know, the side story, the B story of season 3, is we get a very interesting look at John Crease's backstory. Now, this is very interesting. I found this very interesting anyway. To go back to, and we're going to talk about Crease a lot, because this really did focus on him a lot. Cobra Kai belongs to him now. And we're going to talk about how the characters have sort of shuffled around. But going back to Crease's history and how he's introduced in a diner, and you automatically think that the first guy you see going into the diner, this big jock, this, you know, varsity guy or whatever, you think that he's Crease because he looks like a bully and he's, you know, kind of intimidating the bus boy. And of course, it turns out that the bus boy is Crease, and that's a great way of subverting expectations, because we see basically how Crease pretty much came from nothing. Apparently his mother committed suicide. She had mental issues, and this kind of aimlessness is what sends Crease off into the military, into a life of the military. And he leaves a girl behind who apparently, anyway, dies in a car crash. I'm not sure. What's his name? The guy there, Anthony Michael Hall, I believe is the name of the guy who plays his sort of deranged, you know, drill sergeant or whatever. And that kind of is what sets him up to be a little off mentally himself when it comes to learning karate. But one of the things that didn't work for me though was the sort of twisting it on its head. We see them in sort of that familial the familial story of bringing back another character from season 3, Terry Silver, and we see a guy that has the ponytail, has sort of the manic laugh and the energy, and he is captured alongside Crease and a couple of other soldiers and the sergeant or whatever, and he gets killed right away. And everybody's probably thinking, well, isn't that Silver? And we find out at the end, Silver is actually one of the other members of the captured party that in Vietnam, which again, that subverts expectation, but that's kind of, it didn't work for me. I felt like they were trying too hard, because it's virtually impossible to have someone look, act, and sound exactly like one person, and then that person gets killed, and then the other person who doesn't look, sound, or act like they will in the future somehow brings out those mannerisms after the fact from somebody else that they knew that died. It's very strange and very odd. I didn't think that worked. But again, to put a cap on this part of the conversation, the history with Crease and the birth of the Cobra Kai and how he had to basically defeat his commanding officer there in a snake pit. This is stuff that, you probably didn't expect coming into the Karate Kid. This is what John Kreese went through. But again, it works. And he becomes a very cold character from these incidents in his life, and ends up killing his commanding officer, which he probably didn't have to do. He certainly didn't have to do. So again, this is where we get Crease, and we find him in the beginning of the Karate Kid series. All right, so moving back a bit, let's take a look at where we start. As I said, one of the reasons why I think that this season wasn't as good as season 2, it wasn't quite as tight because, and this is not a problem, but it's because they had to deal with the baggage, the consequences of season 2. Season 2 just could go in the directions we wanted with. We're going to see this reconciliation between Johnny and Crease, and how obviously that wasn't going to work. In this case, though, in season 3, we have to go through Miguel's paralysis and his recovery, which of course needed to happen, and it was good. They did right by the storylines, and consequently, Robbie, who is in jail or juvie because he did that to Miguel, and we have to kind of wait several episodes of seeing him get picked on and eventually sort of finding his place in the world now, and toughening himself up a bit more. And all this stuff is happening, and it's kind of like it has to happen, but it's not really the most exciting storylines. And like, I was watching Jeremy Johns a couple of days ago when I got through watching the series, and he was saying, well, this really wasn't Johnny's season, this was Daniel's season. And I think that's true to an extent, but I don't think that it was for lack of screen time with Johnny. I think we just didn't really get as much prime stuff for Johnny to do. He kind of has the opening scenes there where he's trying to, make things right with Miguel and Robbie. And then he kind of like doesn't really have a good story for the interim until the end when Allie comes in. So it's really not, again, it's not really a bad season for Johnny, but it is kind of a stronger season for Daniel. So again, that's kind of, I think they were more equal in the second season. I think that's what I like. I like when you have enough Daniel and Johnny getting some prime storylines. The first season was like all Johnny, and I was like, I like Johnny as a character. Of course, he's kind of the draw for the show, but you got to kind of have that balance, because we came into the story through Daniel pretty much, going back to the Karate Kid. Speaking of that, I think what I liked about it, again, we're jumping all over the place, but I like the fact that they allowed Daniel to get his side of the story out. Because we heard, of course, Johnny's version, which a lot of people try to take as fact now. But Johnny's skewered version that he gave to Miguel in the first season, Daniel does his own version of it here, which is, again, pretty much what we saw in The Karate Kid, because we see that film through sort of Daniel's eyes. And then eventually, when Allie gets into the story and we finally bring her in, Elizabeth Shue is great, by the way. I know I was really impressed with Elizabeth Shue because she doesn't really have a big role here, but her importance is such that you would think she was like the Obi-Wan Kenobi of the series, you know? If Mr. Miyagi is the Yoda, I would say Allie is the Obi-Wan Kenobi. She just has this like gravitas that when she comes into the scene, you know, it's sort of by proxy of Johnny and Daniel, but she like carries all the presence of the room. You know, Johnny is completely in her power, Daniel's completely in her power for the time that she's in the room. And she also really, as a credit to Shue, for it being like one of her first roles, and she, you know, she was a good actress in the part, but she really did make the effort. Of course, now she's an Academy Award nominated or winning actress. Didn't she win it? I think she won it. But she actually seems to have gone back and studied Allie and actually plays her as an older Allie. Because, you know, I was kind of concerned, well, you know, she's sort of just going to do a glorified, you know, not a cameo, but just a part in the story, and that's it. But she really puts the work in. You could tell she sort of has that same cadence in her line delivery, the same kind of gleam in her eye when she's doing these lines that she did, you know, whatever it is now, 35 years ago or something. So again, you know, props to Miss Shue. And I think this is probably the only appearance she's going to have in this series. Again, I don't know. It's hard to tell, because if the series hopefully will go on for multiple seasons, because that's the reason why they went to Netflix. They are hoping to carry this on for as long as they've got stories, and I am hoping that it is for quite a while. But like I said, I think Allie served her purpose here. Going back to the original point, it resolves the business between Daniel and Johnny that started in that first film. I think, and she even, like I said, bringing it back full circle, she actually like comes right out and says, there's really three sides to every story. There's Daniel's side, there's Johnny's side, and then there's the truth. And that, at least for the purpose of the series Cobra Kai, that's it. That's the truth. There is a middle ground. That Johnny wasn't really a, you know, mustache twirling villain. Daniel wasn't really a troublemaker, but they both kind of had a chip on their shoulder where one really wasn't going to leave the other one alone. And they resolved that through Allie, and I thought that was really, really good. If there was only one downside to the Allie storyline, I really wanted to hear more about why they broke up, her and Daniel, because in part 2, Karate Kid Part 2, he only gives a throwaway line, Daniel, about Allie wrecked his car and then fell in love with a UCLA football player. And they kind of just like reference that in this episode, but they don't really explain too much of what happened. Of course, you know, we're talking about kids that were like, I don't know, 17 years old or something at the time, so it probably wasn't much of a story. All right, trying to piggyback off that a little bit, let's talk about Amanda, which she is the most interesting original character in this show. Probably. I mean, you got the juvenile cast, of course, which pretty much they're all great across the board, but they really have done their work on her to try to make her an interesting character. Because at first, when I was first going into the show, I was like, she's not a character from the original movies. Is she going to have enough personality? Is she going to carry enough weight to be interesting? Because, we all want to see Johnny, and we want to see Daniel, we want to see Crease and some of the other familiar faces from the series. But you have to go on faith that she's going to be interesting enough as Daniel's wife to really support a good, 25% of the show. And she does. They give her some pretty interesting stuff to do this season. She she slaps Crease, which prompts sort of her being with a restraining order against her, and that was really funny. But again, she's not passive in the storylines, but she doesn't dominate them. And again, this is sort of just plain old-fashioned good writing, where you can have a character that's strong enough that you enjoy seeing her when she's on the screen, but she doesn't take over and doesn't feel like, well, do we have to see more of her? You know what I mean? It's a very good balance, and they fit that balance very well. I think it was also interesting they had Johnny's ex, I can't remember her name in the show, in it briefly as well. I'm glad they're not forgetting about her. Speaking of this, let's touch on this part now. This is something I was concerned about if you watched my review of the second season. Carmen and Johnny do actually have a romantic relationship in this season. And I remember saying last year, and again, it kind of holds true here, where I don't know if that's the right way to go. I'm kind of concerned about it. I mean, they do pretty much think these things out. And I know I was really concerned that when he started getting together with Johnny, that it was going to resolve itself into some kind of triangle. Carmen would walk in on them or something, and it would be this soap opera cliche storyline. Thankfully, they don't go there. They seem to know what they're doing. But again, I don't know if it's worth jeopardizing the relationship with Miguel, just because Carmen is obviously attractive and Johnny's attracted to her and vice versa. I don't really know how well that's going to play out with Miguel. And then you have to also worry about how it's going to play with Robbie. I don't know if they're setting themselves up with some kind of, they're going to hit a wall at some point with that storyline, and I don't know if it was worth trying to do that. But we'll see. Speaking of Robbie, now this is the interesting thing. There's a lot of character allegiances shuffling around during the whole series, but again, during the season. Let's talk about some of the kids. Now, because as I said, of his involvement with the juvie system and whatever, now Robbie is on Crease's side by the end of this. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Hawk, what happens between he and Dimitri was pretty intense stuff. Again, I really like that storyline there where Sam, she tries to be a fighter, and then eventually, her inability to fight comes back, and that she's no help to Dimitri when Hawk breaks his arm. And I like the sort of gang mentality there between Sam and Tori, which we didn't talk about Tori enough yet. We'll get to her in a minute. But there's that like gang mentality of Sam and Tori, and they're both leading their respective gangs. And whoever gets caught in the middle gets caught in this crossfire. And again, it's a very soap opera-ish thing, when you stop and think of it. It's basically these two girls fighting over any permutation of the two boys that they like at any given time. And, it's pretty cool, though. I mean, you got, there's war waged. There's karate war waged everywhere by teenagers in the Valley. And again, it's a great premise that it's heightened reality enough that they're treating it like Shakespeare in a sense. But then again, in another sense, it is so goofy that you have to take it, like I said, with a heightened reality, a grain of salt. Otherwise, you would just not be able to accept it. But so again, then Hawk, after I think I don't think they really sold this well enough. It might be just me. Maybe on a second watch, I'll be able to pick up on it more. But Hawk, after what he does to Dimitri, sort of sees the error of his ways. He sort of reflects on Johnny's words. Of course, Johnny kind of like gives him and the other Crease students a talking to. And so now Hawk is on Johnny's side. And it's very interesting. At a certain point now, Johnny is in charge of the Eagle's Fang, which is his new dojo. So you have 3 competing dojos in the valley. This is kind of interesting because the show is called Cobra Kai, and Johnny, who is apparently supposed to be the star, right? He's not in control of Cobra Kai anymore. So it's going to be interesting to see where this all ends up. We'll talk about where this could go in the future in a moment. But again, let's finish talking about this stuff. Tori, let's talk about Tori for a second. Where we find her at the beginning of the season is pretty much she's keeping her head down and trying not to get in trouble because of all the shenanigans that happened the previous year or the previous season. And it's interesting, you know, Crease finds a way around her that was just like so ingenious. You know what I mean? Because you don't expect to see a soft side with Crease. And I'm not really trying to sell what he does to get Tori on his side as being soft, but he does kind of treat her sort of grandfatherly, and he, you know, one would think he's got her best interests in mind, but again, Crease only really sees his students as soldiers, as weapons for himself, really, you know, to fight his wars. And so it's very interesting to see how that worked out. And again, I find when I watch the show with the allegiances moving around as they do, I don't really know who's the villain. Now, let me try to explain this a little bit. Now, I know we all know Crease is the villain. Crease is sort of like the devil of the franchise. I mean, he's the Palpatine. Nobody really expects him to be redeemed by any means. He's, you know, a bully, a racist, and pretty much everything else under the sun. So it's kind of hard to see him changing his ways. But to my mind, Hawk and Tori were the antagonists, where they kind of feel like they think they're doing the right thing, but they kind of enjoy it. They enjoy kind of inflicting pain on the people that they feel have done so to them. And so again, that's what I mean. I struggle to see who's going to really be the antagonists when this is all over. I don't think there is going to be any of the juvenile leads as antagonists. I think eventually, you know, Hawk has already come around. Tori's probably going to come around. And I suppose it's going to leave Crease with no one. And it really, again, jumping around all over the place, when you see the ending of this season, where it's basically Johnny tries to take out Crease, then Daniel tries to take out Crease, they're both eventually going to join forces. In fact, they actually already do by the end of the last episode here. They join forces, and they're going to take on Crease next season in a tournament. But how does this end? We've already seen this happen before, and I'm pretty sure that the showrunners are going to do something different, because Crease has already lost the Cobra Kai before. He's already gone back to Terry Silver, who, of course, is he's sort of the bankroll of the Cobra Kai. And we are given that, you know, that little tag, that little hint at the end of the season that he's getting in touch with Silver. And potentially Bad Boy Mike Barnes, because if I remember correctly, I think he negotiated a piece of Cobra Kai, Barnes. But they're going to have to try to explain exactly what Terry Silver is doing with Cobra Kai at this point. Because in Karate Kid 3, all Crease had to do was just send a call to Silver to get some financial support and so forth. Last season, Crease was sort of like homeless, really. You know what I mean? And, you know, it kind of makes you wonder why he's waited 30 or 40 years or whatever to try to get Cobra Kai opened again. So they're going to have to sort of get around that, I think. But again, I trust these guys that they know what they're doing, and they're pretty much going to, they're going to do something different, but they're going to pay homage to, the basis of what the legacy is. A couple of things, let me see if I can touch on here before we finish up that I might not have yet. We do feel the presence of Mr. Miyagi again, and I think they've done the most with the presence of Mr. Miyagi in this season, which, of course, is always a strong thing. Kumiko has some letters that Miyagi wrote to Yuki. And again, that's very nice because the way we left it in Karate Kid Part 2 was that Miyagi still, carried a torch for Yuki. And it was sort of like, she says, "Take me with you," and he doesn't in Karate Kid Part 3. And they don't really ever address anything about why not, And at least we know with Kumiko that she ended up, touring with a dance troupe and stuff like that. But we never really hear anything about what happens with Yuki. And so the idea is that Miyagi had some kind of correspondence with her, that he'd send her letters and love letters and so on and so forth. And so finally, the last letter, of course, that Kumiko reads to Daniel is very touching. And it sort of gives us a glimpse into that sort of last area of time before Cobra Kai started, between movies, where Miyagi was sort of, as he even describes himself, the grandfather of the LaRusso family. And again, that's very touching stuff. And it's interesting to see how they can run the gambit of all the emotions. It's very moving, and and they did a very clever thing in bringing Daniel back to Okinawa, because of course it ties directly into his car dealership, because Toyota, a kind of familiar sounding name. Toyota, of course, was the company he had to do business with and go all the way back there. I also like that they went through the effort of getting back the bell girl from Karate Kid Part 2, the bell ringer girl. And you could tell it's the girl. She still looks exactly like her. And, so they didn't get another actress. They got the exact same girl to come back. And of course, because of his, that yin yang thing, the karma or whatever you would like to attribute it to, of his saving her life, she saves his company. And again, they did right by Kumiko. She, she still seemed to carry the torch for Daniel's son. And, you kind of feel sorry for her, because she never married, and apparently her career wasn't, sort of an earth-shattering thing, but, it was good to see that she was sort of, I guess, living her dream, living her best life, as they say. And, of course, Tomi Village now renovated once again, from the land time forgot to an army base to now the, what is it, the Tavern on the Green, or whatever the heck it was called. I thought that was kind of fitting, because one would think Sato had to bring that village up to snuff. Well, he didn't technically own the village anymore, right? Yeah, but still, he was a rich enough guy that I suppose he probably, being a philanthropist, maybe did things to sort of renovate that Tomi Village and get it on the, get it off the ground into more of a place of commerce. Okay, so let's talk about some of the things I didn't like. I wasn't crazy about the tone switching back to sort of the vulgar humor. They went much further into the vulgar humor this season than they did last season. I was not a fan of it in the first season when they did it, and I am still not a fan of it here. I wish they would sort of cut back on some of that stuff. References to body parts and things of that nature. Yeah, I don't have to go any further. They still drop, I had to say, this was funny, they still drop one F-bomb per season, and this season had to be the funniest. I don't know if that's what the intention was, but they had there's like two really skinny, scrawny kids in this series. There's like the blonde kid with the glasses, and he gets kicked out of the Cobra Kai. And then there's the Asian kid, and he comes in after getting beat on. And I don't know, I just thought it was funny that he drops the F-bomb there. I don't know why. The funniest scene though to me this season, which it killed me. I had to rewind it, but it's the good cop bad cop scene with Daniel and Johnny. Those guys are gold whenever they're together. And that's the thing. They don't put them together too many times a season because you got to preserve that. You got to preserve that gold. And when they're questioning the two guys in the prison, that scene was just hilarious. He's like, what are you afraid of him? You're not afraid of me. He starts slapping them. Oh man, that was hilarious. So I hope to see more of those scenes, those kind of scenes. It reminds me of sort of the Ario Speedwagon scene in the first season. And I don't know, did they really get a good scene together in the second season? I can't remember. But more of that stuff, please. Just more of that stuff. That was great. I was disappointed that Stingray wasn't back. I have a feeling he wasn't a popular character. But what did kind of disappoint me, I wouldn't say disappoint me, was I didn't really care for some of the characters from the first season. And here they brought them all back. There was Hanush and, I don't know, the cousin, I don't remember his name, and Yasmin and her little friend, and who else? There was the homeless woman from the first season, makes a cameo. I was like, I could have done without ever seeing them again. But to the credit of the show, they really didn't overplay them. They had just like one scene. Oh yeah, there was the bully too. The guy that bullied Dimitri and Hawk. I can't remember his name. The good-looking Asian kid. They brought him back too, but I can understand him because seeing as how he was a bully, it only made sense he was going to wind up with Cobra Kai. I mean, so I can understand that. The other characters really didn't need to be there. Aisha was dropped from the cast, and again, I honestly didn't miss her because she was another character that, although she was strong in the first season, I could kind of tell the writing on the wall that she wasn't really necessary in the second season, and she definitely wouldn't have been necessary here. I think if I remember correctly, I heard they said that there really wasn't any storytelling opportunities with her, so they decided to just write her out. But, the way they seem to be addressing these characters, they have it open-ended so that they can all come back whenever they have need of them, I suppose. So I don't suppose we'll be seeing the last of Aisha if they do have some kind of, purpose for her in the future. The length of the show, of course, is the only other thing I don't like. I swear, I thought I was on the 8th episode. I knew there was 10 episodes in the season. I was on the 8th episode, and I was like, wait a minute, it's over? It was the 10th episode. They go by so fast. The show is so good, they could easily probably make at least 2 or 3 more episodes a season, but they're going to keep it. They're going to keep it as is. I was surprised. Now, of course, when Daniel gets his power up by going to Okinawa and Chosen teaches him the Miyagi techniques, I kind of knew that was going to come back, but I didn't know it was going to come back with the fight with Crease. That was something I think everybody wanted to see. Nobody ever really... I mean, Miyagi fought Crease briefly in the 3rd film. And, of course, the what happens at the beginning of Karate Kid Part 2. But this was like an actual fight, you know what I mean? And seeing Daniel and Johnny go at it with Crease was largely satisfying. I thought the house fight at the end was also very exciting as a series, or as a season finale. Yeah, really exciting. I was surprised that they didn't do anything with the drum because I was kind of thinking that we're going to do something about that at the end of the season because this was sort of the Karate Kid Part 2 season. But they used sort of Daniel using the fisherman's pole that he teaches Sam how to cast, sort of using the staff. And they used that somewhat at the end as the Sam and Tori fight at the end. So that was cool. That's just about it. That's basically everything, I think, for Cobra Kai Season 3. What are we looking forward to in Season 4? We know there's going to be a Season 4, which is cool. I think, Daniel and Johnny, Ralph Macchio, and William Zabka, they've only gotten better in these roles since the first season too. I watch these guys now, and it's like no time has passed. I mean, it's a very different thing than the Karate Kid movies, but the connectivity is so strong that you can feel this really takes place, after the Karate Kid, and it does feel like these same characters. It's the logical continuation of the series, and that's very exciting. We didn't really talk enough about, I suppose, Miguel, arguably the star of the juvenile cast. There, he again, he had a good storyline, and the stuff with him and Johnny was pretty good. Again, I like that they didn't really just snap their fingers and move through it, because it was going to be a tough thing to try to, within 10 episodes, get Miguel from being paralyzed to being a karate sensation again. So again, I understand that. I think that they had some funny, some funny moments with Johnny basically just trying to, sort of beat the paralysis into submission, so to speak. That was kind of funny. Another thing that comes to mind is Tori's mother. They're keeping that character very secretive as well, and I don't know if it's for any reason other than sort of the subterfuge that people were wondering, was she Allie's daughter, or I don't know. I mean, could it be Jessica from Karate Kid 3? I doubt it, but that's sort of an interesting thing going forward. What are we going to see from that character? Is it going to turn out to be something important in the Karate Kid legacy? I don't know. Apparently now, of course, like I said, Robbie is Crease's star student. Daniel and Johnny have joined forces with their respective dojos. What happens with Terry Silver? I'm starting to feel a lot more now that Terry Silver is going to be into it, because a lot of people were saying, well, the actor hasn't acted, I don't think, for several years. He's a writer now and a director, producer, something like that. And I was like, you don't usually get an actor who given up the business to come back just to do, something like this. I do feel pretty strongly now that he's going to come back. Thomas Ian Griffin. Because they did some kind of Zoom show not too long ago where they did actually get him to come back and, talk about the show, the movies, the show, whatever. He didn't, of course, confirm anything about being involved in the season 4, but I think you will see him eventually. And again, like I said, I just hope they don't burn through their legacy too fast. I mean, there's always the possibility of Chosen showing up again, or Kimiko, or Ali. I don't really think those characters have much more to offer, though. They're sort of just out there on the fringe. So again, if Silver comes back, I would hope he would have something significant to do and not just be a 1 or 2 episode personality. Not only because he was really good in that role, he was sort of the redeeming aspect of Karate Kid Part 3. As far as Bad Boy Mike Barnes, I really want to see him. I know Sean Kanan, I believe is his name, the actor's name, wants to come back. He's been talking about coming back since the end of season 1 to the role of Barnes, and I'd love to see him do it, and I know he'll do it, if asked. But I wonder if maybe they should hold off on his character for further down the line. That might be what they're doing, because you have to remember, in order to keep this going, you need to have an antagonist keep going. Now, while Crease is the runner of the Cobra Kai dojo right now, what's going to happen in the future? How are they going to move past Crease? Will they bring in Mike Barnes as his successor? And again, this goes forward to, or goes back to kind of what I was saying about going forward. Who is going to be the main villains? Because the kids keep changing their allegiance, and even Johnny has tried to go the way of the fist with Cobra Kai again, and then is sort of now in that middle place between Cobra Kai and Miyagi-Do. So how do you get rid of Crease at this point? I mean, I don't think this is the kind of show where they kill somebody off. I don't think they're going to kill anybody with karate, so I don't see how Crease ends this. He has to be somehow disgraced, and he has to be somehow sent off, but I don't really know that they go there to kill him, and I don't really know how they get rid of him, so to speak. Especially when we've already done sort of that with Part 3, Karate Kid Part 3, and Terry Silver bailed him out, and Terry Silver may very well bail him out here again. It's kind of hard to see where this is going to go. How do you resolve Crease in this, he's never going to give up Cobra Kai, and he does have a friend with deep pockets in Silver who could conceivably let him run this thing as long as he wants. Also, going forward, I wonder how this show is going to end. Is it going to really end with Johnny and Daniel being friends? They've been frenemies, and every single season they have a slight slap fight, fisticuffs, just barely. Are they ever going to get to the point where they either just battle it out, or are they going to just end it as friends and sort of, do the Apollo and Rocky thing where they sort of have one last fight to see what the other has left in the tank or something? I don't know. It would be interesting to see how they end this, with them as either friends, or are they going to just always keep that frenemy thing? They kind of end it with one of the last episodes of the season with Johnny actually calling him Daniel for probably the first time. And again, that's nice, but I honestly, if you ask me, I want this show to end. The last thing to be Johnny saying, "You're all right, LaRusso." That's the way the show's got to end, if you ask me. And to be honest with you, like I said, the way that these showrunners really know their stuff, and they know how to give the fans what they want. They know how to do fan service right. I bet they're going to end this series with "You're all right, LaRusso" from Johnny Lawrence. Okay, so I think I've gone over just about everything in Cobra Kai Season 3. To give it a ranking, I would say I'm going to give it 4 stars out of 5. 4 stars out of 5. I believe that would be probably an A-. Like I said, it would be an A. I think there was some of the humor. Again, I don't really like when they do stuff like that. And the reason why I really liked Season 2 partially was because they got rid of some of that. And again, it wasn't quite as tight of a storyline. They kind of had some storylines that were not as interesting in the beginning of the season, and it took a little while to sort of get to where we wanted to be. By necessity, it wasn't really their fault. That's why I'm not going to fault them too much on that and bring it down to a B or anything. But I think it's definitely a minus on that A. But again, if you're a fan of the Karate Kid series, if you're a fan of Cobra Kai, you're not going to be disappointed. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Is there anything else that you would want me to address about Cobra Kai? And let me know what you think. What did you think about this season? What is your favorite season of Cobra Kai? What is your favorite Karate Kid movie? What is your favorite Karate Kid adversary? What do you want to see happen next in Cobra Kai? How many seasons do you think this will go? I hope this continues on for a good, with only 10 episodes, they really could give us a good dozen seasons if they wanted to. Probably, I would hope for, anyway, a dozen strong 10-episode seasons. And like I said, hopefully they get back to work on that ASAP. So, that's it. And remember to like, share, and subscribe. Make sure you check out our show, The Only Way to Spend Your Saturday, here with us on the Johnnie Torch Live program. And until next we meet, this is Johnnie Torch reminding you once again, keep the flame burning brightly, and I'll be with you again real soon.